Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Inspiring Thoughts podcast today. I'm delighted to have Marisa Thomas with us today, who's across the pond. So, Marisa, would you like to share where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Stephen. I'm out in Richmond, Virginia, in the USA.
Fantastic. So it's really good. And what time is it, being a bit nosy? So in the UK, it's just 20 past 4. What time would it be for you, Marisa?
Oh, 20 past 11. We've got a
20 past.
5-hour difference. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it's great. It's great to have you. And just to share with everybody, Marisa was introduced to me by her brother-in-law, Alex, who's been on a podcast as well. So a good connection there. Marisa, I promise, Alex was very kind off air. So I just share for that point of view. Very
You're not
kind.
going to say share with me, even if he wasn't, are you?
No,
I'll get it out
definitely
of
not.
him. Yeah, a few
Yeah.
drinks. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, definitely. So, just to welcome Marisa. So, Marisa's the founder and executive coach of Doors Effect, which is a wonderful organisation. Also, you might be able to look in Marisa's room. Is also her book that she's produced, "The Power to Lead: How to Optimize Your Energy to Thrive in Leadership." There's a little plug there we've got as well. So, please check it out. Please check it out. So,
Oh,
today.
I don't
Well,
know where
just
my camera just went. Okay,
Oh,
let
we
me
just
bring it
got the
back.
camera coming back on.
There you go.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. I think we got excited there,
I think
Marisa.
that's it. I've got
Yeah.
to realize that I've got to be careful about where I move.
Yeah. So, Marisa, people are always interested from our podcast point of view.
Mm.
Would you just give people just a bit of a brief description about your career, how you got to where you are today? Because I know we had a chat off air, but that'd be wonderful to share with people.
Yeah, thank you. I might actually go back, a little bit further than we even discussed. It's just bringing in the work ethic. I am a clear believer um, of you get out what you put in,
Yeah.
and that really started at a young age. I would help my dad with his building a landscape company, but my first real check came at
Yeah.
the age of 15,
Yeah.
which I didn't even realize that I was able to get a job at that point. I was
Yeah.
accompanying a friend into town who wanted to get a job, had seen this advertisement on a shoe shop store,
Yeah.
and she was like, I can't go in. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, just have a conversation. To me,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
wasn't that, you know,
Yeah.
difficult. So she was like, will you go in for me? And I was
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, I'll ask about it. So I started asking about it and was
Yeah.
making it very clear that it wasn't for me. It was my friend who, I
Yeah.
didn't think I was at the age to. Anyway, long story short, we both ended up getting a job there. And
Fantastic.
that was my
Yeah.
first job. And it taught me that, you don't get if you don't ask.
Yes.
And if it was a no big deal. I just moved on to the next thing. So it was a
Yeah.
really good early learning for that, and stuck with me throughout the rest of
Yeah.
my career. So
Yeah.
out of university into a teaching career. I was a school teacher and college
Yeah.
lecturer for a while. So my passion for teaching others, helping others grow, really
Yeah.
started there. And then I wanted to expand that further, and in the corporate world, and I didn't
Yeah.
know how to do that, and I didn't have the experience. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a step back. I'm just going to take whatever entry level I
Yeah.
can get into an organization that I want. And that's when I started my journey, 25-year journey in
Yeah.
the financial industry at Capital One. Started off on the phone. 6 months in, I was in the training department,
Yeah.
grew through there, leading operations, leading larger groups of
Yeah.
individuals, turning my hand to vendor management, to strategy and analysis and various other
Yeah.
disciplines. I got a massive amount of opportunity that if I wanted it, I could go after it. And
Yeah.
Capital One was fantastic in supporting that journey. And in 2008, I moved over to the US
Yeah.
operation from the UK, and grew further from there. But my passion for growing the leadership strengths of others just stayed, stayed with me. And I always gave about 20% of my time helping other leaders find their best self
Yeah.
and being able to amplify their impact. And so in 2021, I decided, you know what, I've got this passion's I've just got to unleash it even further.
Yes.
So I set up my company, Doors Effect, and started bringing in coaching clients, leadership development contracts, while still doing my executive role at Capital One. I wrote a book, The Power to Lead, which you kindly introduced to everybody. I developed a leadership development app called Rising Catalyst, which is available on Apple and Google. I really provide that to my coaching clients and my consultant clients right now. But it's there. If you want to use it, go out and take a look. And so I did all that. And then about a year ago, decided to go all in. And it's been fantastic. Just the growth I have gained and the support for the organizations that, I am blessed to serve, both in the, US and beyond. So I have clients over the UK, US, and Canada, and that's growing, and it's been a wild journey.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, because I think it's fantastic to see people growing and also doing their passions. Because you and I had a chat offline about being passionate about what we do. And I said to you that, do you know what, the job that I do, do you know what, I love Mondays. I get up and I've got a real buzz to a Monday. I don't get Sunday night bellies anymore or anything like that point of view. And I just think, now, what can I do? Creative. I like learning. It's just a great place to be. So I think it's fantastic. And I like the way that you said Canada there, the UK, America, very global, Marisa. I like that. I like that. Yeah, it's fantastic. So what we've done for Marisa, like all our guests, we send 7 questions in advance so we can give Marisa some good prep. So today we're looking about trust in leadership. So it's a really important thing. One of our key pillars is about leadership, but how do we really build that trust? So the first question we've got here, Marisa, what role does trust play in effective leadership, and how can leaders actively build trust? What do they need to do to build trust with people they work with?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And in purely answering that question, what role does trust have in effective leadership? It's everything, right? It's at the core foundation of what makes everything else possible. Without trust, your best strategy, your best people can't really function in the way that you want them to create the outcomes that you want. And so, that for me is the catalyst, is embed it in your foundation as an organization. But for me, that shows up in 2 categories, right? The trust starts with you and then placement. So you have to start with you first, right? How are you preparing yourself both mentally and physically to be up for that role of positioning yourself in a place where others can be at their best, right? And it's less about you showcasing it. It's about your individual awareness of, how you show up in different environments. So I think that creating the mental agility so that you can be truly present allows you to be authentic, to tune into what your audience needs, not what you need. And that's where trust starts. When you know you, people can connect with you better. Because they're not confused as to what you stand for.
Correct.
They are very clear on, even if you're the polar opposite of somebody else, they can appreciate, be inspired by you, and add to your mission and your vision in their own unique way, because they're clear about what you are and what you are not. So being clear on you and championing yourself when you're off the field, when you're out of the office, right? And practicing that ability to be present, practicing the ability to leave ego at the door and know who you're serving, and physically being prepared to show up when you're needed in the right way. And so that's the first part, that you getting
Yeah.
clear on you, so
Yes.
that when you're clear, others can be clear. The
Yeah.
second part is that placement,
Yeah.
and that can be different. How being effective in leadership through trust, it
Yeah.
isn't a one size fits all formula. It needs to be placed in the culture of the organization that you're in.
Yeah.
And Amazon culture is very different to a traditional bank,
Yes.
culture. And so you've got to figure out how do you connect the culture of the organization to the
Yeah.
unique, diverse talents that you have in your organization. That's through culture, that's through social
Yeah.
kind of etiquette and placement, and the environment that you set. And
Yeah.
all of that is really important to be able to kind of say, hey, I know what I'm working with.
Yeah.
I know the uniqueness of each individual and
Yeah.
groups of individuals in the organization. And I appreciate that, right?
Yes.
You're not trying to make everybody fit.
Yeah.
You're trying to help people see themselves in the problem statements, the vision,
Yeah.
the strategy of the organization. And that for me is, another cornerstone
Yeah.
for building that trust. So you and know where you're placing
Yes.
the foundation for that trust in
Yeah.
the organization, so everything links.
Yeah.
They know you, they know the
Yeah.
business, the strategy, and they can connect themselves, because you've given them the
Yeah.
space and the environment to do that, to how they fit into that culture and how they can
Yeah.
add value. So that for
Yeah.
me is the starting point, which is generally not where people think you're going to start with trust.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's key.
Yeah. And I think there's the bit there about, I just love the bit there, Marissa, about know who you are. So the bit where, if I just took in the coaching world with me working with people and that, people know I'm direct, I'm challenging. They come to me for that coaching rather than being a coach that is not me. So it's that I just love that point about, who you are, be who you are, but you've got to be polite, courteous, those kind of good, being a good human. But I think there's a bit there if we see too many people not being who they are, and then it becomes a bit clumsy, a bit clunky. They make mistakes, etc., and people get confused, don't they, around them. They're
Mm,
going, I don't
mm.
know. And also we start to see disconnect between who they are in work, who they're outside of work, how they write an email, how they verbalize. It all becomes a bit jumbled, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just going to expand on that a little bit more, Stephen, because it's just made me think of, me in my early career. And I
Yeah.
think this is common. I hear it a lot from, my coaching clients, and those that I support, is it early on in your career, you allow yourself, because you're learning, right? Because you don't know
Yes.
how, and because you're
Yeah.
learning, you allow yourself to be conditioned by what you see around you.
Mm.
You see other leaders getting effective outcomes through certain
Yes.
behaviors, and whether you
Yeah.
like them or not, you start to compromise your own
Yes.
values. You
Yeah.
start to go, well, yeah, I know that my values
Yeah.
would mean that I would do this, but in order to succeed, I have to be like
Yes.
them. And so
Yeah.
we do, it's natural human behavior for us
Yeah.
to protect ourselves from the
Yes.
fear of not being accepted, the
Yeah.
fear of not being understood,
Yeah.
or bucking the trend. Well, if they're doing it and they're getting
Yes.
success, then that must be the right way, whether I
Yeah.
agree with it or not.
Yeah.
And you do that as a natural course. And I do think that there's some merit in going through that experience in your
Yes.
early career, because you learn through those mistakes
Mm.
just as much as you do from the things that are uniquely yours, and
Yes.
your power and your strength that you bring, that
Yeah.
resides in those values
Yeah.
that are core to who you are.
Yeah.
And you find it
Yes.
often too late.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you look back with regret and think,
Yeah.
oh, well, why didn't I do that sooner? But I actually kind of go, well, you know what, without that, maybe I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how I look at it, from that point of view of working in the bank for 26 years, having my own company for the last 5 years. I'm really grateful, going through those things. And I never wanted my own company, but I went through a bad experience and it kind of enlightened me to go on, I can do it, from
Mm,
that point of view. And I love it. But I think you have to take those snippets along the road to go, that taught me this. This is what I learned by it. It's good to put it into our, like I call it, sports bag, that those
mm,
are the things that have made me who I am, if that
mm.
makes sense. And that's
Yeah.
where we should celebrate and go, actually, it
Mm,
may not what I enjoyed at the time, but actually it taught me this, and that's what I want to change for the future. It's a great learning curve as well, isn't it?
yeah. In my book, I phrase this as the perfectly imperfect hero leader. If
Yeah.
you're going to be your best, a hero enables an opportunity not for themselves but for others to
Yeah.
thrive, and everybody rises together. But the hero leader only emerges by the blend of their imperfections as well as their
Yes.
perceived perception
Yeah.
perfection, right? Nothing is perfect, nothing
Yeah.
is the best that it can be,
Yeah.
because things change,
Yes.
right? And so I love just reminding people that when you're at your greatest,
Yeah.
and that's when you're impacting something that's bigger than yourself,
Yeah.
you're actually using your imperfections just as much as you're using
Yes.
your perfections, because it helps you
Yeah.
see things, right?
Yeah.
um if you think that you've got everything that's in your arsenal
Yeah.
to um achieve the goal that
Yeah.
you've set for the organization, um and you just keep tunnel visioning towards
Yes.
that, you're losing the opportunity to see the amazing talent that you have around you and to empower
Yes.
them to bring their
Yeah.
strengths to the surface. Their strengths are
Yeah.
not your strengths, and you need them just as
Yeah.
much as they need you.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of as you get you can say older, maturity, etc. I know I need to surround myself with people that are better in areas than I am. I can't do it
Yeah.
myself. We can't grow the business just on my way. It's people working with each other, collaboration, etc. And I love it. Pure reason being, people spark ideas, and I go, "Oh, I hadn't really thought of that. It's a brilliant idea." And working with each other. And what I noticed when I left the bank in 2019. I was institutionalized. All I ever knew was the bank.
Mm,
And I did love the bank from that point of view. However, when I come out, I'm like, what a world that I can work in. I can do things, collaborate with people, all that kind of stuff. It's fascinating what opportunities are out there, but you've got to make them happen at you. You've really
mm,
got to make these opportunities happen. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
So on that bit, we've built trust with people, but what can people do once they've broken trust? So from that point of view, we've said about building trust, etc. But once trust is broken, what can people do to build it back up or bring it back in? What can people do?
Mm,
Especially if I
mm.
took a team leader, if they break trust, what could they do?
Yeah, I think there needs to be first an acceptance that you will, not just once, but often, you will break trust, not because
Yeah,
you intend to. It has been a function of um,
yeah,
outside forces, right,
yes,
that have influenced you. So I think that the first part is, one, give yourself some grace,
yeah,
right?
good call.
And when you can give yourself some grace and you
Yeah,
set your mindset to know
yeah,
that you will fall into the traps,
yeah,
and you will create an environment where trust gets corroded, that doesn't mean you can't get it back, right?
yes,
if um if if you are willing to accept that that will happen, right?
yes,
And so once you've got that acceptance that that will happen and you're open to that, that awareness needs to
yeah,
be at the forefront of your mind
yeah,
all the time. Some of the strategies that I would say to bring things back into to
yeah,
trust is to first be vulnerable, right?
yeah, yeah,
You have to own that error, and
yes,
you have to let
yeah,
those that you have impacted
yeah,
wrongfully but
yeah,
unknowingly, now that
yeah,
you're aware, you've got to put on your big
yes,
kid stuff and
yeah,
stand up and go, do you know what, I've learned something about myself today,
yeah,
and here's what I learned,
yeah,
and here's what I'm less proud of, and here are some of the things that I want to tell you about what I'm going to commit to going forward, because it's important to me
Yes.
that we change that, and it needs to start with me.
Yes.
Yeah. And when you can shoulder that burden, when you can put the vulnerability out there that you have recognized, the one thing that here's where I have a challenge, and I'd love to get your point of view on here. I don't ever think that it is effective to belabor the point of saying sorry, right?
Correct.
I think if you are, and this is where I always put the constructive word in front of things. If you are going to be vulnerable, I want you to be constructively vulnerable.
Yes. Yeah.
So that means position yourself where you're being vulnerable, where you're showing that you're aware.
Yeah.
But don't diminish the message.
Correct.
Because the minute that you say, words are really important. The minute that you say something like, I'm really sorry, I did wrong, what you are now allowing is for that conversation to float away somewhere else.
Correct.
The words that you then speak next will land only marginally.
Yeah.
And that's because people are sat there thinking, yeah, you should be sorry. Yeah, I told you so. They're having a dialogue with themselves and therefore not listening to what you have to say. Whereas if you start off with, I've become aware of something that I'm less proud of and I want to share that with you. Here's what I've learned. They hear, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. But they're willing to hear, well, what did you learn? And now what are you going to do about it? So I think the words that you choose to use are really important to build that trust.
Great.
Because you can diminish that trust even further if you use the wrong words. And those wrong words can end up with the, oh, you want me to feel sorry for you now that you realize that you did wrong. Yeah, sorry, not sorry. Great. Thanks for saying it. I'll carry on, go and do my thing. That's the one thing that you don't want to create.
No.
You want them to hear you and follow you.
That starts to go into sympathy mode, doesn't it?
Yes.
Where people go, actually, they're trying to get sympathy, take the agenda away from me, those kind of things. And I'm a great believer of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits about an emotional bank account, about apologize once, do it really well, but also tell the person what you've learned by it, that it shouldn't happen again, because you can't say it won't. But from that point of view, you're moving forward rather than dwelling. And one thing I don't like is when someone keeps saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, because you go, you're not really learning anything. You're just trying to get me to say it's not a problem. But I think a deeper, meaningful, as you've shown there, is actually something I'm less proud of. Can I just chat that through? This is what I've learned by it, is a maturer, higher level, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from there is being really clear and just pick one or two things, be very concise as to here's what I'm going to commit to going forward. And only pick 2 things that you absolutely know you will be consistently doing and committing to. Because the minute that you say something and then do something different, or that you break that consistency even just once, that trust goes again. And so I don't want you promising the world, and I want you to be, upfront. To regain that trust, you have to be able to show them what you're committing to, pick 1 or 2 things that are most important, and consistently deliver against those commitments.
Because the bit there, which is it crosses over from our mediation world and leadership, when trust is broken, people become hyper vigilant and hypersensitive. So if you say, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things, as soon as you do one not well, I knew you wouldn't do that well. Whereas if you say, and I believe this even in meetings, do 1 or 2 things really well and be proud of them, rather than have a catalyst of objectives. Whereas when that trust is broken, do that 1 or 2 things, you'll build trust, because the person will go, oh, thank you. Even when they're hypervigilant or hypersensitive, that will then kind of restore that relationship. But then you build upon it, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I would add to this as well is make sure that you're giving space to hear the voices and that you truly hear and you take on board without judgment,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
So if you set that environment that you want to hear people's opinions and you want them to have a voice, but then you say, okay, I'm just going to limit it to whoever, and then you pick the same people that you always pick.
Yes.
You now only have trust of the few that you already
Yes.
have trust in, right?
Yeah.
Who already trust you. So you've got to make sure that you're broadening, that you're really creating that environment to hear all voices and avoid justifying why you did it.
Yeah.
Right? Even
Yes.
if there is a good justification, you
Yeah.
know, it's much more powerful to say, yeah, that's a really good point. I hear you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't matter to them that you didn't intend for it to land like
Yes.
that. So for you to verbalize, yeah, I hear you, and
Yeah.
you know, let me explain to you what I was doing, why.
Yeah.
That says to them, you're not listening,
No.
or you just
Yeah.
didn't hear.
Yeah.
So what's the point? And you're
Yeah.
not going to do anything with it, or you're about to tell me why. Yeah, you're not going to compromise on it. You're going to still behave
Yes.
like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They hear the unspoken words much
Yes.
more loudly in
Yeah.
your actions. So the action of being silent, giving space, and
Yeah.
acknowledging is much more powerful than trying to justify why.
Yes. Yeah. And I think there's that kind of no communication is communication. So giving that air time to breathe. I say breathe, to breathe and go, yeah, actually I hear you on that, rather than a justification. Because I've been there many times when people start to justify, you go, it's like literally rolling up a piece of paper and throwing it in the bin and going, they've not heard me. All I wanted to do is chat it through. Now we've gone into a different world, and unfortunately then conflict grows. So that trust is then, where it started to be built back, is lost again, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So how would you, being a leader, about being transparent with people, but also protecting confidentiality? Because sometimes it can wrangle from that point of
Mm.
view. How do you build trust with people? How would that work from a trust point of view, about being transparent with people, but also confidentiality? Because you would have been in your executive role, certain confidential things, etc. And it can be quite tough at times, can't it? So
Yeah,
how would you keep trust with people around transparency and confidentiality?
yeah. I think there's a level of honesty that
Yeah.
needs to be, you know, that needs to be communicated, and that honesty needs to also marry with boundaries, right?
Yeah. Good.
Um, so being clear and setting the expectations as to, you know, I'm going to communicate with you frequently, and what I can share, I will share timely, and
Yes.
do that. Actually, but then be very clear and set boundaries as to, if sharing something is without grounded
Yes.
understanding, or it needs to remain confidential for the right reasons,
Yeah.
I need you to know that you can ask me questions about it, and I
Yeah.
will have to respond with, here's what I know right now,
Yeah.
and then I'm able to share.
Yes.
And yes, there is more, but that I don't have the details to share with you right now,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
now is not the right time. But setting those expectations up
Yeah.
front and setting those boundaries as to, there will be things
Yes.
that I will not be able to share with you, but know that when I can, I
Yes.
will do it
Yeah.
timely, frequently, and I will give you a voice.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that you can really do, right?
Yeah.
And stick to it. There's no
Yeah.
good saying, hey, there's stuff that I can't, and then you get badgered with questions, you know, the
Yes.
questions that you can't answer, that they keep
Yeah.
coming and they keep asking,
Yeah.
and you're repeating the same answer over and
Yeah.
over again. And at some point, your resolve kind of goes, okay, all right, maybe let me just give you this little tidbit,
Yes.
but keep it in this room.
Yes.
The minute that you do that, gone.
Yes. Correct.
Right? That trust is
Yeah.
gone. And then when they want some confidentiality in you, they
Yeah.
kind of go, should I pick you to have this confidential
Correct.
conversation with?
Yeah.
Because you're willing to
Yes.
break that rule,
Yeah.
right? That you've set
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah.
And I'll give you, I am known for, and I say this to people, it's like, I'm a rule breaker when the rule doesn't make sense, right?
Yeah.
And that's part of me, that's my
Yes.
values. And that helps me to kind of go, well, you know, if there's a conversation that needs to be had,
Yeah.
and we're not having it, or I think we're making a wrong decision,
Yeah.
and the rule says this isn't the place for it,
Yeah.
you know, I might sometimes break that rule,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because I'm not the only person in the room that needs
Yes.
to hear that. But I'm going to balance it with my constructive optimism,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
And that constructive optimism
Yeah.
will be, I think there might be a better way. And
Yes.
it causes me to verbalize my
Yeah.
opinion in a way that's not judgmental, that is
Yeah.
not demanding, that is not ego driven, but is fueled with curiosity. I'm
Yes.
curious why we think that's the right path,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there's a couple of good things back there. So I'm a great believer of boundaries. And I wish if you was to bottle it up and maybe go back 20 years in time to say to younger leaders, boundaries is key, because I got that wrong when I was a new leader. I thought I've got to be access 24/7, you know, I've got to be there for people, that kind of stuff. But as I've got older and mature, boundaries work beautifully. And I think the bit where you said there, people will chip away with questions, etc. And sometimes they ask the same question, but in a different way, so different language and that kind of bit. But you've got to go from a moral point of view, going, I can't answer at the moment. This is what I can share, but you've got to stick to it. Because as soon as you drop that bit, then they're going to go, well, I don't believe in them because they've dropped confidentiality. So I totally get that. And I think boundaries are hard, but once you get there, people respect them.
Mm,
And they go,
definitely.
actually, and it goes back to your previous bit about we know who that person is,
Mm,
doesn't it? It
yeah.
goes back to that being look after myself first. I set boundaries, my integrity, those kind of things, rather than I'll share something with you, but I won't share it with other people just because you've asked me more questions, etc. So I think that is kind of super important, especially for younger leaders or any leaders in that makes
Yeah.
sense. So
Yeah.
I find that really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, something just popped up for me as I was listening to you talking, Stephen,
Yeah.
which was about the extension of that know yourself,
Yes.
is to also know your people,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
You need to understand, you know, where they are, and
Yeah.
you need to meet them where they are
Yeah.
in order to bring everybody into the conversation in the right way.
Yes.
It can be very easy for, you know, different points of view on any topic
Yeah.
to feel like, you know, well, yeah, I have a different opinion, but she's not going to want to hear my voice.
Yeah.
So it's up to you as a leader to invite those voices in,
Correct.
and to do that in a way that you're connecting with that individual to say, I'm asking you because I know you,
Yes.
and I think we're missing here. So I
Yeah.
am, if you've done those change leader indicator
Yeah.
assessments, I'm right on that visionary risk
Yes.
taker. I'm like that, you know, change is good,
Yes.
right? change is
Yeah.
painfully good, right?
Yes.
And then, but I need people on the other end of the spectrum, the real
Yes.
conservatives, to
Yeah.
really help me out. And so it's possible that, and it comes up a lot, you know, that we've got a message that we know is going to be hard for people to
Yes.
take, and to
Yeah.
want to move through their change
Yeah.
curve. And part
Yeah.
of that, I often see leaders try and almost brainwash, right?
Yes.
Let's be over
Yeah.
optimistic about
Yeah.
this. Let's share why we're optimistic about it.
Yeah.
And I'd rather go, you know what, here is something. When I heard this, when I went through, you know, my change curve on this, I've got to be honest with you, you know, here were some of my reservations.
Yes.
And so talk them through my thought
Yeah.
process. And that invites people to go, oh, do you know what? I'm feeling
Yes.
uncomfortable with this too.
Yeah.
And when you know the person as well as yourself,
Yeah.
the trust comes to the surface when you can say, hey, Stephen, you know, I'd really appreciate your opinion on
Yeah.
XYZ. Because I don't know that I've really got a good answer, because my
Yes.
head's in optimism, love change
Yes.
mode, and I need you to balance me because you're really
Yeah.
good at, right?
Yes.
When you can get that kind of connection, that one, use
Yeah.
your name, one, I'm recognizing that you have a different skill set that I don't have,
Yes.
and I value it. Now
Yeah.
trust rises.
Yes.
Now
Yeah.
that individual is going
Yeah.
to work to my cause
Yeah.
without me knowing what they're doing, and we're all
Yes.
good with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the bit there of I talk to a lot of people about expansive thinking and reductive thinking. We need both. So like your optimism of let's go, we can do it, expansive thinking, but we need those reductive thinkers to go, have we thought about that? Have we thought about this, to really make it a successful program or project? And I think the bit there, which goes back to a bit of the Pareto law, the 80-20 rule,
Mm.
you usually get the loudest. So, 20% of people control 80% of the outcome. Whereas actually you need those other people. And I just love the bit where you said there, Marissa, you said about the trust flies up. You don't need to do a lot to build trust.
Mm.
You just need to go, I need a bit of help from you here. You're really good at this. What are we missing? Come on, give
Mm.
us some ideas. Because they would have ideas. And you're not going to get that loudest person, but you'll get that most thoughtful person joining. So I think that's a brilliant, brilliant example. Really good
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fab. So if we have a look at about authenticity, so I think you touched on it earlier around, organizations have their kind of thought process, where they want to go, return on investment, profit, loss, etc. How do we still remain authentic when sometimes things may cross our values? How can we still try to be authentic?
Mm.
How would that fit for you?
Um, it, Again, this is a challenge you're going to face daily,
Yeah.
maybe hourly, right?
Yes.
That if you're in a leadership role and the stakes are high,
Yeah.
there are going to be calls to action
Yeah.
that will conflict with your values.
Yeah.
The important thing for me is I really love an assessment called Values in Action. It was co-founded by Martin Seligman, who is known as the father of positive psychology, and it was created at the Penn State University. I love this assessment because
Yeah.
it charts 24 different values from
Right.
questions that you're asked,
Yeah.
and it elevates your top 5, right? And oftentimes we don't know, we don't tune into how those values are showing up.
Yes.
And when our values are triggered,
Yes.
it causes us to overuse a
Yeah.
value, right?
Yeah.
That can be detrimental to the outcome. So
Yeah.
you want to be conscious of what your top 5 are,
Yes.
and then realize, where am I maybe overusing my value of
Yeah.
fairness, for example.
Yes.
Maybe one of them is fairness, and
Yeah.
something's just got triggered because the path that we're charting right now
Yeah.
doesn't quite seem fair. It
Yeah.
doesn't quite seem like a fair process. And then you have to then go, well, what are some? I know I'm overusing my fairness value.
Yeah.
How can I balance it? What out of my other top 5s can I balance it? So curiosity might be one,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And then you can look at those
Yeah.
and you
Good
can
call.
use them to your advantage. So
Yeah.
knowing your top 5 values, and
Yes.
in those moments where you recognize the
Yeah.
tension, when that value is triggered,
Yes.
be aware of
Yeah.
that value is triggered. The a coach of mine that I had, you know, a lot throughout my executive career was a guy called David Martin, and he does this, you know, a really powerful exercise that really connects you with when you're triggered. It's normally some sort of emotion. It's something that comes up, and we're in control of that emotion. What we're not in control of is the thing that caused it.
Yes.
And oftentimes what we try and do when we get triggered is fix the event that caused us to feel like that.
Yeah.
We don't own that. We didn't own the event. And so that's always stuck with me. And it's something that, you know, I use a lot for myself and also with my clients is know when you're triggered, but remember what you're in control of.
Yes. Yeah.
So connect to what was the event that caused me to feel this way, and let go of this notion that you control the event, because you don't.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
What you control is your emotion and your actions moving forward.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you have recognized that, you're able to then maximize the value that is going to serve you the most in order for you to move forward out of those top 5.
And that's beautiful. I really enjoy the bit there of actually in work, as you said, you're going to get test hourly, daily, etc. But it's going, well, that's the event. How can my values bring it to life, work with it, those kind of things, rather than keep justifying the event or the event is or blaming it. That's what it is. Actually, how do we work from it, or how do we then elevate one of our values around curiosity, fairness, etc.? Could be integrity, could be anything, but how do we elevate it then to get people to go along with us rather than us turn into, and I see a lot of it in leadership where people don't own the problem, they blame the problem. So then down the line, it's not my fault, it's the big people above us, the executives, it's their fault, etc. Rather than going, well, that's what it is. You know, that's what we've got. This is how we work with it. Let's make sure it's consistent, fair. I think that's a brilliant way, really good. And I think, so sorry, you said values in action, and that was by who? Sorry, say again, Marisa. So just for our audience, so values in action.
Martin Seligman.
So really
I'm trying to remember the name of the second person. I feel terrible that I always forget his name. Peter something. They co-founded it, but Martin is known as the father of positive psychology. And there's some really great tools when you take that assessment. You can take a free one.
Yes.
Or there's some paid ones that give you a little bit more in depth.
More deeper.
Yeah, and then there are some courses that you might want to take that are, you know, online courses that are a quick hit and very practical. So a really good resource.
No, really good, really good. So in times of like uncertainty or with strategies, what do you use to even strengthen trust? So if I took like the banking crisis we had in 2008 and kind of you'd have been in that financial markets, that what would you kind of recommend about when there's uncertainty? How would you strengthen trust?
So this comes back to your preparedness for those moments, because it's not a case of if, it's a when they occur. Are you ready? Right. And so preparedness. So let's look at the preparedness bit before we think about well, what would you do in the moment? The preparedness is around how are you creating the mental space on a daily basis and the physical space on a daily basis to be ready for those moments, right? So, you know, these might be mindfulness practices that you do on a daily basis, but they're things that help you connect to being present.
Yes.
Because when you're in stressful situations, when storms hit, that ability to be present goes out the window. Everybody just goes into action mode, and you have this chaos. And everybody's running around trying to fix something before they've even figured out what actually went wrong. What are we trying to fix? Are we trying to fix too many things and really we only need to focus on one? When you are practiced in being present, it allows you, when the storms hit, to tune into that. So when all the noise is happening, when the chaos is happening, you can be that voice that says, hey, Let's calm.
Yes.
Let's bring some calm to it.
Yeah.
Right. Let's just get present. Right.
Yeah.
If you're present, you can influence, inspire others to
Yeah.
take a breath and to
Yes.
step back from the problem and stand on the outside for a minute.
Yeah.
And start to think more mindfully about the decisions that you might make. And it
Yeah.
allows you then to step them back and
Yeah.
see the wood from the trees.
Yeah.
And you're the person to be able to do that. That is the person that they want to see show up in those crisis moments.
Yeah.
Right. And that's where trust comes into play.
Yeah.
Very profoundly, because when they're feeling anxious because they're looking
Yeah.
at answers, when your head's in the future,
Yeah.
you're creating anxiety, right?
Yeah.
When your head's in the past, you're creating depression. You
Right.
do
Yeah.
your strongest work from presence.
Yeah.
And so it's for you as a leader to create that trust by not only being present yourself, but creating the environment where you
Yes.
allow everybody else to become present.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so, and then bring them back in. You're using those, hey, Stephen, um, help me understand,
Yeah.
what first came to mind for you when
Yeah.
you heard about this problem?
Yes.
And then ask
Yeah.
other people into the comment. Normally the ones that aren't the loudest speakers are the ones that you
Yeah.
want to bring in
Yes.
first, right? And before you even tell what your opinion
Yeah.
is, hey, here's what I know. Make it really brief,
Yes.
high level. But we don't quite know all the details. What are
Yeah.
some things that we need to think about? I want the wisdom of the
Yes.
crowd. Bring them in.
Yeah.
And so it's pulling on all those tools that you've consistently
Yeah.
been doing on a day-to-day basis of hearing all
Yes.
voices, connecting to the problem. But if you've set your boundaries,
Yeah.
people will know, and you
Yeah.
can repeat those boundaries,
Yeah.
that we are going to have a variety of different opinions here. And not
Yeah.
all of them are going to be the actions that we take.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm going to listen to all and I'm going to make decisions. But here's what I
Yeah.
need from you.
Yeah.
When I make a decision, I'm going to give you the context of why I've chosen that decision. And then I
Yeah.
need you to all be in. If
Yes.
your idea wasn't there, I still need you to be all in and
Yeah.
charting in this direction.
Yeah.
They need that. They need someone to stand in front and
Yeah.
say, we're going to clarify the problem together. We're going to create solutions together. But there is
Yeah.
going to be an ultimate decision that's made that
Yes.
doesn't include everything that we've discussed.
Correct.
And whatever that is, we're agreeing
Yeah.
to move forward with it. Because
Yeah.
if you have one person who's
Correct.
out of sync and kind of goes, I don't think that's the right
Yes.
decision. We should have done the thing that I said.
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for the moment where I told you so.
Yes.
Right. And that moment
Yeah.
may appear.
Yeah.
Right. But it does nobody any favors if
Yes.
everybody is out. So it's acknowledging that. It's acknowledging, you're going to want to cut corners.
Yeah.
You're going to want to take your path instead of the path that we've
Yes.
collectively chosen.
Yeah.
I want you to know that that's a human
Yes.
response. It's a
Yeah.
human response, but you are in control to
Yeah.
remind yourself where we agree to move forward.
Yeah.
And I trust you.
Yeah.
And you need to say that. I trust you to move us towards this shared goal that we have come to today.
But it's powerful, isn't it, Marissa, is saying to people, look, this is what we're looking at. This is the problem. This is how we're going to move forward. Like it starts, I want your views about move forward, but we are going to move forward today. So it's a collective move forward. We are going to move forward as a collective team, etc. But I want to hear your views, but we are going to have to make a decision. That brings back those boundaries, clarity, those kind of things. That human beings, we're not always going to agree on everything, but actually, we do need to do something to move forward. We can't stay in the past. And a silly phrase that I use, well, not silly phrase, but evolve or dissolve. So you've got to keep evolving, or you're going to dissolve, if that makes sense. But I love the way then, yet again, you working with teams. And personally, I would have, loved to have worked with you because it's that maturity to go, let's just talk about it. Come on, let's use that grey matter in the room. How can you've got some good ideas, let's do it together. But there's that leader going, we are going to make a decision. We're not just going to sit here for hours talking about stuff, but we are going to have to move forward. That's that key leader, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, Stephen, what we tend to do, what is the norm, unfortunately, within organizations, is because when crisis happens, we want to move quickly.
Correct.
And therefore, we kind of say, you know what, we haven't got time for that conversation.
Yeah.
As the leaders, we're going to define what we understand the problem to be, and we're going to define the path forward and the steps. And I think that's the wrong thing to do. Sometimes you're on the receiving end of that, and you don't have a choice but to receive it and move your team forward with it. So if you're on the receiving end, you know, you still have an opportunity to hear the voices within your team as it cascades down. But I think that's a habit that I'd love to be broken in corporations. It's like this notion of there is no time to think, there is no time to hear the voices, therefore we have to move. And we end up doing things more expensively.
Correct.
We create issues that we didn't anticipate because we're not the people closest to it. You know, we employ our people for a reason, right? For them to do the work that we can't do, right? And recognizing and empowering people to do that. And in our most critical moments, that's when you need to hear from them. That's when you need to hear, do you know what, here we've got this problem and we need to find a solution. And they just might have that solution. I'm going to share with you quickly a story that my nephew told me of a organization, a case study that they did in his organization. And it was a manufacturing scenario. Basically the end of the line, there were issues of a product at the end of it. And there was, you know, too big of an error rate. And they realized that there were, you know, heating elements that caused these things to go wrong. And so they were like, well, how do we get that and catch it before it goes out and correct it up front? So the leadership team took it upon themselves, brought in expensive consultants and so forth to build this problem. And they came up with this multi-million-dollar solution. Well, the multi-million-dollar solution went into play. And while it reduced that error rate, it was still too big of an error rate. The person on the floor that works with this had one of the executives come down to have a look at the situation. And that executive turned around to them and said, what would you do? And they went, can you give me $50, well, £50? Right? Yes. What are you going to do with it? Just trust me. They went out, bought a fan, put it at the end of the line and put the fan there, and the fan solved the problem. Right? Ask your people. If they had in that scenario, they would have got to solution quicker at $50 versus multi-millions dollars 9-10 months later of a subpar solution.
And it's interesting. So we're working with a client at the moment where if the executives spoke to people on the ground, they'd really understand what's going on. And I just love that executive saying, what would you do? And I go, give me $50, let me go and have a look at it and do it. Whereas what we see in some organizations, the executive make the decision, it filters down, then they pay millions of pounds, millions of dollars for consultancy fees, etc. Whereas actually you've got the people there that are very clever. And I was on a call earlier with some people and have some great ideas about how to move their business forward. But that was people that work there. They said, actually, I've looked at some data. And I went, oh, can I have a look at it? Yeah, let's have a look. Oh, I've looked at this data. This could work. That's going to solve overnight. We can do something rather than bring in a consultancy firm or do anything like that. We've got to be able to use the people we've got because they've got some great ideas, really good stuff. That makes sense. Okay, brilliant. So I think we could chat for ages, Marisa.
So I could go on for days and days talking about these.
I'm so passionate about it from that point of view. But how can people reach out or contact you from that point of view? What's the best way for people to connect with you, Marisa?
Yeah, the best way is to visit my website, which is doorseffect.com. So DOORSEFFECT ect.com, Doors Effect. And on there, you can get to set up some time with me. There's some buttons to set up a call. And you can also just read through, the services that I provide. I'm on LinkedIn. So look me up on there as well. Connect with me there too.
Oh, fantastic. So can I just say a huge thank you today, Marisa? I think there's some really good, sensible thinking, which I really, really love about actually involving people, boundaries, the language we use, about owning it as well, and how we build trust from being actually understand ourselves and placement. So we really got some good hints and tips, the value in action work as well, that really understand our values and how can we then pull down one of our values but move the others up. I think we've got some great learning tools today and some learning tips. And I know we're staying in contact from that point of view. But can I just say a huge, huge thank you for joining us today on Inspiring Thoughts podcast. I wish your family and yourself a really nice festive period. But I just want to say a huge, huge thank you for joining us today. So I really appreciate it, Marisa.
Thank you, Stephen. Same here. It's been great and energizing to speak with you. And if you read a copy of my book, The Power to Lead, you'll know it's all about energy, right? And all of those concepts are in there. So go and check it out on Amazon. It's in all formats, audio as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So thank you very much, Marisa.
Stephen.
I really appreciate it. And I'm just going to turn off the call now, and I'm sure we'll just catch up in a minute to finish up. But I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.